Okay. Baruch Hashem. Welcome everybody to the class. Parshiot, Behar, Bechukotai, the last two Parshiot of Sefer Vayikra. God willing, this Shabbat, when we read the Torah, we'll be saying Chazak, Chazak, and getting ready for Bamidbar, and getting ready for Shavuot. A lot of great things happening in the next few weeks. So let's, without further ado, let's see what we can learn from this week's Parsha, or like I said, Parshiot. Let's share the screen. If I remember how to do that. There you go. I knew there was a button for that. Okay. Oh, there we are. That is the source sheet that was sent out earlier today for the class, and we're going to start right with the text. This the parsha, just get a quick summary. The parsha deals with the laws of shmitta and yovel, some of the laws of the land of Israel, the Jubilee year, the sabbatical year. Every 7 years, the land is not allowed to be worked. We're not allowed to profit from it. And on and during the and every cycle of these 7 years, every 7 cycles of these, which makes 49. I'll do the math for you. Is the Jubilee year when everything returns back to its original ownership. So even if you sold a house or a field, in general, that would go back to you. So any real sale is really just a temporary or really long-term lease at most. You were always going to get your land back to the ancestral heritage that it belongs to. That's what Behar is mostly about, and Bechukotai deals with some of the blessings that will happen if we follow the Torah, and of course concludes with the some of the curses that will happen if we do not follow the Torah. We have seen the blessings, most of us, in our lives, and we've seen the curses. It's pretty clear, pretty miraculous that all these things actually do happen as Hashem promised. So that's where we are. That's basically a summary of the Parshiot. Now, it's interesting that we mentioned this in previous classes, but it's always good to remind ourselves that the Parsha of Bechukotai with the curses, all the bad things that will happen if we don't keep the Torah, is designed, according to the rabbis, to be read the Shabbat before Shavuot. We want to have this holiday of Shavuot. It's joyful and happy and everything else, but we need to also keep in mind that there's certain expectations that are on us, a certain onus of responsibility of making sure that we keep the Torah, and if we don't, we need reminders sometimes of what might happen, unfortunately. All right, so with no further ado, let's get right into it. Chapter 25, and most of Parshat Behar is chapter 25. I'm pretty sure almost all of it, basically, is only one chapter. It's a very long chapter, but it's one chapter, chapter 25 in Leviticus. Great name. Chapter 25, verse 2 says, Deber el bnei Israel. Hashem is telling Moshe, speak to the Jewish people, ve'amarta alehem, say to them, ki tavo el haaretz, when you go into the land. It was not a if, when. Ki tavo, when you go into the land, asher ani noten lachem, that I'm giving to you, v'shavta haaretz Shabbat lashem. You need to give the land a Shabbat, a Sabbath to Hashem. Now this is the introductory verse to the laws of shmitta, of the sabbatical year when you're not allowed to work the land. Now there are a lot of ways to say, it should be special, it should be not worked, but why is it called a Shabbat for Hashem? It's an interesting phrase. And you might think, oh, well, before we get to what you might think, let's see what Rashi says. Rashi, the great classic commentary, the basic source of most of our knowledge of our understanding of the Torah. Rashi says, Shabbat Lashem. It's a Shabbat for Hashem. He says, L'shem Hashem, in the name of Hashem. In other words, in honor of Hashem, for the glory of Hashem. That's why you're doing it. Kishem, just like Shenamar b'Shabbat Bereshit, just like it says with regard to Shabbat of Bereshit. Now, what does it say about Shabbat in Bereshit? When the world was created, Hashem rested. What does that mean? He rested. He didn't need a break. He's not like us where we get tired and we need a vacation. We need to lay down. We need a nap. Hashem took a 1-day nap. It was 6 days, a lot of work. I need a break. I'm going to make a Shabbat. That's not what it is. Shabbat is a time to dedicate ourselves to Hashem, to take a break from other things. Doesn't mean to vacation. It means to focus. It means to maybe even work harder than during the week in some ways. It's a lot. Shabbat is a lot of work, as long as you're doing it right, which is you're doing it for Hashem. You're not doing it for yourself. The Behar Mayim Chaim and the Huskuni. I didn't have time to bring the sources here, but you'll have to trust me that this is what they say. So they write on this Rashi that a lot of people, what Rashi is writing about is to destroy the misnomer, the idea that some people have that Shabbat is a vacation day. Shabbat is your chance to recharge your batteries, to unplug. Now that's true, but that's not the purpose of Shabbat. Now the purpose of Shabbat is to connect to Hashem. It's supposed to be a day to re-energize your spiritual self, to not think about your physical work and school and whatever else is going on. You don't have to worry about your bills. You're not opening your mail. It's a day not to think about that, in order for you to think about prayer, to singing songs to Hashem, enjoying. The Behar Mayim Chaim makes a big point. That's why we have the songs that we sing at the Shabbat table. Isn't just to entertain ourselves. It's to refocus what we're here for. Why are we eating this giant, beautiful meal? Is it just because we can? We're not at work, so might as well have a big meal? No. It doesn't have to be, by the way, it doesn't have to be a big meal. We'll get to that in a few moments. But the specialness of the meal is about feeling and realizing that you're at the banquet table of Hashem. You're enjoying his aura. And Shabbat has the power to have that kind of aura. So what Rashi is telling us is, not only does Shabbat have the ability to do that, but every 7th year, when we have the land of Israel, when we live in the land of Israel, the land's holiness is such that every 7th year, for the whole year, you can feel that way. That whole year, the farmer is not working. What should the farmer be doing? Sleeping? Vacationing? Working somewhere else? No, the idea is that you're not working. The idea is this is your chance to crack open a book, to learn some Torah, to register to yeshiva or something, to really absorb as much Torah and spirituality as you can during the time that you're not working the field. Working the field is exhausting. It's there's potential for heat stroke, and it's sweaty and messy and dirty and muddy and everything else, and different seasons, and there's animals and etc. It's a lot of work. To be able to take a break from that and to focus on spirituality for an entire year was supposed to ennoble our community. It's supposed to make us greater people. like Shabbat is supposed to do during the week. So that's what Rashi's telling us here, according to the Be'er Mayim Chaim. Just like Shabbat does during the week for all of us, Shemitah does for us once every 7 years. It's a real spiritual recharge, not just vacation. All right, that's what Rashi says. The Ramban has a completely different view of what Shemitah is all about and what it means, Shabbat LaHashem. So he quotes Rashi as is his method, and he says, Rabbeinu lo kach nitkavnu. This is not midrasham. This is not how the rabbis understood it. He says, what does it mean? He call hashabbatot gam hamoadim l'shem Hashem hem. All of the Shabbat and all of the holidays are all for Hashem. Lo yamar be'echad behem LaHashem, but it doesn't have to say that this is for Hashem. Why does it have to say about Shemitah that it's for Hashem? Ella aval amar yeh lachem Shabbaton. V'amar b'yom HaKippurim Shabbat Shabbaton hu lachem. And it calls Yom Kippurim a Shabbat, the Torah does. V'loshen ha'braita b'Torat Kohanim, and there's a braita that he's going to quote from Torat Kohanim. It says, Shabbat LaHashem kishem she'amar b'Shabbat Bereshit kach ne'amar b'Shvit Shabbat LaHashem. Again, he connects this with the Shabbat of creation. So what? And just like, and this is where he agrees with Rashi in a sense. Rashi said this too. He says, just like Shabbat was for Hashem in the beginning of the world, Shemitah is that way. Shvit or Shemitah is that way also. What does that mean? Val perish Shabbat LaHashem Elokecha ha'amur b'Shabbat Bereshit kivo Shabbat v'yanafash alkin lo tasa kol malacha. You should not do any kind of work on Shabbat. L'kach amru ki kein nemar b'Shmita. Same thing on Shemitah. You're not supposed to do any work. Ki hi shvit b'shanim, and it's the 7th of the years. And he says, "V'ine bekan oruru otana b'sod gadol misodot haTorah." And what it's teaching you here is one of the great secrets of all the secrets in the Torah. So there's a secret. It's a remez. He says, "Kvar remez lanu, Rabbi it's Rabbi Eliezer shekatav v'tam Shabbat LaHashem ki yom haShabbat," just like Shabbat, b'sod yimot olam ramuz b'makom hazeh. V'kov aznachal l'shmoa. Now listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. He says, "Masha ani rashai la'ashmiacha mimenu b'loshon asher ashmiacha." I'm going to try to best as I can to explain it to you in a way that you're allowed to hear it. There's some certain secrets. I want to say that you're not supposed to hear. Everybody's supposed to learn everything, but only when you're ready. So this, you don't have to be. He's going to say it in a way that you don't have to like prepare yourself spiritually to hear this. Im teske bit bonen. If you just have to carefully pay attention to what I'm about to say. Kvar katafti b'seder Bereshit. I already wrote about this in the Bereshit. Kisheshit imei Bereshit hem yemot olam. The 6 days of creation are also the days of the world. V'yom hashviyi Shabbat Hashem Elokecha, and the 7th day is not a day of the world; it's a day for Hashem. Let me explain. He says, "Kivo Shabbat LaShem Gadol." Shabbat is for Hashem. Kamo sheshinu, as it says in the in Tamid, in the Masechta Tamid over there. Bashvi yomeh hayu omrim mizmor shir liyom haShabbat atid lavo shekulu Shabbat. When we talk about Shabbat, we're talking about in the future when every day will be Shabbat. In other words, we're talking about the time after Mashiach comes. There's a promise that when Mashiach comes, we will have a fully spiritual world, fully spiritual existence, outside the realm of normal terrestrial life. We're going to live a life of the spirit, of the soul only, eventually. Doesn't mean immediately. Obviously, we're not all ready for that. And that's one of the things that we're probably not ready for with the coming of Mashiach. But hopefully soon we'll be ready, and he'll be able to come in a way that will be good for everybody. But alas, the hint here is that each one of the 7 days is actually a hint to 1,000 years. He goes on to say, right? Really, Mashiach is supposed to come by the 6,000th year, right? And in the 7,000th years, that's 1,000 years after Mashiach comes, it's supposed to be a time of full spirituality, of a total Shabbat for the entire world. There's going to be Shabbat only. Just like there's 7 days of the week, there's 7 millennia. And the 7th day represents, and that's why it's called Shabbat LaHashem. It's a Shabbat for Hashem because it's a spiritual day. Same thing with this spiritual 1,000 years, this spiritual millennia that's going to happen within the 1,000 years of when Mashiach comes, 1,000 years after the year 6,000. Now, if in case you lost track, we are currently in the year 5785, right? Which means, according to this calculation, without going too crazy about it, we're 215 years away from the deadline for Mashiach to come. He can come before that, and we want him to, right? We want to be worthy of him to come before that time. But if God forbid we're not worthy, then there's going to be war and tragedy and earthquakes and everything else, and he'll come in the year 6,000. Right? That's but by then he has to come. That's the way it's usually understood. You know, we're not. Hopefully he'll come again within our lifetime, and without tragedy and war and earthquakes and everything else. You know, in a good way, in the way that we hopefully will earn. But he goes on to he writes more here. A little more explanation of all these prophecies, where he's getting these numbers from and everything else. All of that is coming from the prophets, etc. And you have it here in Hebrew and English, if you have the time and interest to look at it later. But that's his idea over there. Okay. So very, very different ideas of what it means, that phrase, Shabbat LaHashem, that Hashem doesn't need a Shabbat. And that's why these commentaries need to give different explanations about what it means. Neither of them really are contradicting each other. You know, as Ramban wouldn't say, he basically said he didn't like Rashi's interpretation of what the rabbis say, but he's not going to say, oh, well, Rashi's wrong and you can do whatever you want on Shabbat. That's not what he's going to say, right? And Rashi probably wouldn't argue with the Ramban either. His sources are pretty good. But the question is, what is the simple explanation of our verse? What does the Torah, what's the basic thing the Torah wants you to know when you hear the words Shabbat LaHashem? And the idea is, either way, you're supposed to think that Shabbat is a spiritual time and it can be applied to the land. Okay. Let's keep going. We spent quite a bit of time on that first verse. Chapter 25, verse 17, still in Behar. It says, when we talk about doing business, and of course, when you're selling property, you can't. You're supposed to treat people fairly, etc. You're not supposed to cheat people, sell property for too much of a price, etc. And the verse says, "V'lo tonu ish et amito v'yareite elokecha ki ani Hashem elokechem." Do not wrong one another. Now, it says ish et amito. So amito is from the word am, which means nation. Your nation. So and you should fear Hashem, because I am Hashem, your God. And I couldn't find the source for it to share with you, but there's an interesting discussion in the Tosefet Bracha. Tosefet Bracha was a book written by Rabbi Baruch Halevi Epstein, who was a nephew of the Netziv, and he wrote also the Torah Tamima and some other various books. But the Tosefet Bracha is basically his commentary on the Torah, and he says that in general, Amito, your nation, applies to Jews. But what about non-Jews? Does this verse imply that you don't have to treat non-Jews fairly in business? You can cheat them, steal from them, etc. Some people would want us to say, yes, of course you can. Especially anti-Semites want us to say that. And people who want to cheat and steal in business anyway want us to say that. However, we have a problem. It says the Tosefet Bracha, there's a way to include Gentiles in this as well. Because the Gemara in Bava Kama 38a says that a Jew does not need to repay an akum, an idolater, if his ox gored the other's ox. Based on a verse in Shemot where it says, if your ox gores the ox of your reacha, of your friend, which implies a Jew, but the idolater must pay in the reverse situation. The Gemara asks if this implies that Gentiles should not have to pay the Jew. The answer is based on a verse in Chavakuk, in Tanakh 3:6, that when Hashem saw that the nations of the world were not keeping the basic laws of the seven laws of Noah, so that's when he doesn't want those non-Jews to have money, right? Because they're going to use their money to do bad things, to not keep laws, to not have a justice system, to rape and pillage and whatever else, ancient Gentile nations used to do, the Vikings and the Huns and the Genghis Khan and his people, right? These people were not moral. And if they had the resources, they would do all kinds of damage. So those are the people who are called akum. Those are the people who are called the Gentiles that the Torah is talking about, that you don't have to treat fairly in business. When it comes to the Gentiles of today, hopefully they are keeping the 7 Noahite laws, right? They have a morality. They whether they learned it from us or copied us and made their own religions that they spread usually through violence around the world, right? Father Hunepera Serra here in San Diego, for example, the way he tortured the Kuimai natives into becoming Catholics or whatever. Okay, so we don't agree with the methods, but in the end, right? At least you can appreciate the fact that we're not surrounded by people who kill and scalp and do whatever else. I don't know if the Kumei did scalping. I'm gonna get like hate mail for this. I don't know, honestly, but there were definitely groups of the Native Americans who were violent, warlike. The Blackfoot Indians and the I don't know about the Cherokee. There were definitely groups that were afraid of each other. I don't know if anybody's don't recommend the movie, but if you have ever seen the movie, I think it's called Apocalypto, directed by the great anti-Semite Mel Gibson. Right, so he has a movie there where they talk about the ancient Mayan culture and how they kidnapped people from other cultures and made them human sacrifices, cut off their heads, all that stuff, so we don't want people like that to have resources. People like that who are violent and evil, if they had the money, they would create even more damage. So Baruch Hashem, through, again, possibly very violent and evil means, the truth of the Torah has been spread even to them, and now that not only do they have monotheism, but they have a justice system, they have marriage laws, they have monogamy. There's a lot of things that has spread around the world and has become more or less universal. Again, thanks to Christianity and Islam, I guess. But they are these 7 Noachite laws that we want everybody to keep. It would have been nicer if they would keep it for better reasons, but it is what it is. And now it says the Tosefet Bracha. Now Gentiles who keep those 7 Noachite laws are included in this category of people whom we should treat fairly in business, etc. Okay. And the next verse, the next verses talk about keep my laws and my judgments, otam, and perform them. Keeping them is just academically is not what Hashem wants. He wants us to do them. Vishatam al haaretz lavetach, and then you will live on the land securely. Right? If you do what I tell you to do, then you'll live in Israel, and you won't have to worry about wars, terrorists, Gazan tunnels, or anything. V'natna haaretz pirya, and the land will give its fruit. Ve'achaltam lasova, and you'll eat to satisfaction. V'yishavtam lavetach aleha, and you will be secure. Again, you'll be safe doing this. Asks the Ketav Sofer. I think we'll start with the Ketav Sofer. Yeah. Asks the Ketav Sofer. It's next year we'll do the I had a oh god, Meshech Chochma I wanted to quote. I don't see it in my sources here. All right. Anyway, doesn't matter. We'll get to it, God willing, next year. Not a problem. Just come back. Same bad time, same bad channel next year. Okay. Okay. Back to this though. The Ketav Sofer, that's the son of the Chatam Sofer, writing in the mid 1800s, asks the question that you might be wondering also. It says you're going to live in the land securely. You're going to eat and be happy and satisfied, and you're going to live in the land securely. We made a sandwich out of living in the land securely. You're going to be secure, you're going to eat whatever you want, and you're going to be secure, or something like that. No, it doesn't say eat whatever you want. You're going to eat, you're going to have plenty of food. The land will yield its fruit, and you're going to be satisfied, and you're going to be secure. You just told us we're going to be secure. Why are you repeating yourself, Hashem? You don't do that for no reason. There has to be a reason, and the Ketav Sofer has a brilliant, amazing reason. So we have to understand why it says that you'll eat your food in security, nearly, and it seems to me. By the way, just an aside, the source that I wanted to share with you from the Meshech Chochma, from Rav Meir Simcha of Dvinsk. So he says a very important thing, why this is sandwiched like that. And that's because very often when you ask experts in anti-Semitism, why are people anti-Semitic? They'll give you a number of reasons. They'll talk about, religious reasons, you killed our God, etc. Or they'll give you, historical reasons, we want your land, etc. But very often, throughout Jewish history, and there's example after example, Spain, Poland, Germany, etc. Very often, in America now perhaps, anti-Semitism stems from jealousy. Just from basic, you've got what we want, we don't like that you have it, and we want it, so we don't like you. Right? And you hear it all the time. If you're listening at all to what's going on in the media, and then on the online and everything else, very often you'll hear stuff about, oh, Jews are rich, Jews are smart, they know how to do business. Speaking for myself here for a moment, some of us might be smart, but not all of us are good at business. So that is not. I don't know if it matters to you, but not all of us have been invited to that club, and not all of us are rich for that reason. But yeah, it's not always true. Hopefully, Jews are rich because they follow the laws of the Torah, and they're honest, and they get blessed with success. That's the idea. But what this verse is telling you, the reason why it says this way, is Hashem is telling you, you're going to be secure, you're going to be safe, and the land is going to yield its fruit, and you're going to be able to eat and be happy and successful, no problem. And that success won't breed the usual anti-Semitism. You won't be hated by your neighbors. The Arabs and the Muslims and whoever else is living around you won't want what you have, or won't be violent about it. Even if they do not like you, and even if they do want what you have, the land will have a force field around it, and I will protect you, and they won't be able to do anything. They won't be successful. You won't be able to break through your gates if you do what I say. If you want to know why, I'm not, it's hard to talk about contemporary things without getting controversial. But if you want to ask the question of why are the terrorists sometimes successful? First of all, it's good to remember that they are oftentimes obviously miraculously unsuccessful. We gave some examples in shul over the last few years, the last few weeks for sure, right? Of the plan, the bus bombing that was supposed to be synchronized with all these different bus stations in the middle of the rush hour, and none of those bombs exploded because one was found out because it went off early when the bus was empty, right? So these kinds of things, like, that's kind of miraculous, right? And plenty of miracles. Almost everybody in Israel has a miracle story about these kinds of things. But if you want to know why sometimes the Arabs are successful, well, look at the news, and you'll see we're not always doing what we should be doing. We're not. Even in Israel, there's hate, and there's rivalries, and the reform movement is gaining ground. There's an article that was published just, I think, today. It says that the number of Reformed Jews in Israel has doubled. That's frightening. If they get control of the government, and then Reform law decides who's married, who's not married, who's Jewish, who's not Jewish, and they accept the Reform conversions, obviously. Their definition of kosher, or their lack of concern for kosher, for Shabbat, it all goes out the window, and all we'll have is the Reform platform of just love each other and be nice to each other, which is good too. It's also important to be good and nice to each other. Don't get me wrong, but that's only half of Judaism. And they're going to miss the other half, and that's the connection with a spiritual God that they don't even believe in according to their own, bylaws. So so that's. Sorry, I went off a little bit on a tangent there, but that's an important thing to remember about Jewish history and why things are the way they are right now. So back to our source here, about another reason why it says, oh boy, I see him. Sometimes I go overtime with my my rants, and so let's dial it back. The Ketav Sofer again is giving us a reason why it talks about living securely and the land giving its yield. So he says, "Nirali ki Hashem notin la Adam hakol b'shefa." Hashem gives us a lot, can grant us much blessing. Blessing. V'yesh biyad ha'adam lechol v'yitaneg harbe, and it's within a human's power, once he's blessed with a lot, to eat and eat and eat. But a person can only eat so much and then be satisfied. Then you're full. You can't have more once you're full. Once you've eaten a certain amount, there's enough already. You can't. There's just no room. I mean, according to maybe Bill Cosby, there's always room for JELLO. But according to the rest of us, there's only so much that you can have. Kidei shelo yavo lebeit al yedei rov achilo shtia. V'ayin ari. There's a Gemara that says in Brachot, Ari noham v'lo kupa shabasar. A lion wants his meat, right? Hine im hayu osim kain. If we're going to be like that and just like eat and eat nonstop, uncontrollably, v'lo hayu ochlim rak hanetzracha v'lo yeh golim eretz Yisrael. If we have to get to the point. This is a spiritual point that has to do with a physical reaction. We need to get to the point where we're eating food that we need. We need to eat the amount that we need and not more. If we don't do like that, what people tend to do is they just eat and eat until they're full, which is a problem. You're not supposed to eat to that amount. You're not supposed to gorge yourself. You're supposed to eat just enough that you need, enough to give you the energy you need to do the things, the good things the good works that you do for Hashem. And that's what he says. What the verse is saying, not in the haaretz period, that the earth will give its fruit, va'achatam lasova, and you will eat to satisfaction, meaning. Lo rak l'sova. You will only eat to satisfaction. That's a blessing. When we get to the point where it's so spiritual and we appreciate that the spiritual nature of food, then that's when we'll be able to live securely on the land. That's when we'll have sova and live in that's when we're going to be able to live in a land with that degree of safety. Hashem grants us the safety we need when we're living the spiritual life that He wants us to lead. On a similar note, also not necessarily so much about the food we eat, but also an idea that's sort of lost on I think in some ways on our current generation. It says towards the end of the parsha, the first parsha of Behar. I know we have a very limited time for Bechukotai. I apologize, but we'll get to it. It looks like I'm saving a lot for next time. All right. Important point. Chapter 25, verse 22. Uzaratem et hashana hashminit. And when you're going to sow the ground, the seeds of the 8th year, remember that you rested on the 7th. You didn't plant anything. Now you've got the 7th year, the 8th year crop. And you're going to eat the old crop. You're not eating the 7th year stuff. You're still eating the 6th year stuff. Now, what people don't sometimes don't really picture is that the 6th year has a bumper crop. Enough food for 3 years. Why do I say 3 years? It's only the 7th year you're not planting. But that's because you need enough food in the 6th year for the 6th year. You need enough food in the 6th year for the 7th year when you're not planting anything. And you need enough food in the 6th year for the 8th year when you haven't planted anything in the 7th year to harvest in the 8th year. So you need a triple yield in that 6th year. So that's why the tevuah is yashan, why it's old grain. Ad hashanah sheet, you're going to be eating that old grain until the 9th year. Ad bo tevuata tochlu yashan, and then until those crops come in. Says the Tam Vedat. Why does the verse stress Zeratem et hashana hashminit when you sow the grain of the 8th year? It's because Yes Asher Yidme Ba'adam B'Nafsho Kilo Achar Sheshavat Mimalachat Ha'adama Zman Rav. You haven't been working for a long time. V'nit Barech Mishamayim Parnasato. Maybe you don't need to go back to work at all. You started your 1-year vacation. Continue it. Hashem is taking care of you. Hashem took care of you for a year. Hashem can take care of you forever. You're not on vacation. It's a permanent vacation. You have retired, right? So yeah, you're in retirement mode mentally. All right. So he says that's why the Torah has to tell you this. Lazel is hira haTorah. That's why the Torah has to stress. V'zartem et hashana. You're gonna gather in. You're gonna reap in the 8th year. Now let's get back to work in the 8th year. Start reaping, right? Sharak al yedeh shenohag hu manhag derech eretz. The way you have accustomed yourself to work, you need to continue to work the amal and work hard. The havi teref lenafsho, and then yivarchu Hashem yitbarach masbia lechol chai ratzon. It's only when you work and earn, and he's basically paraphrasing here a phrase from Tehillim, right? That Hashem opens his hands and satisfies the needs of everybody. Hashem will continue. This is right. So from Ashrei. So the same thing here, that Hashem will bless us and give us all of our needs only if we earn it by working. We're not the group of people that say, we don't have to work, we can relax and take it easy, and Hashem will do his thing. It's only through work. Amelut and hard work is an important part of Jewish understanding. All right, we're going to have to get to this Kliya car. It's a very long piece. I can summarize it and go into detail next year if you want. But basically, he asks the question. The verse says we're not allowed to charge interest, and it gives two different words for interest: neshech and tarbit. So neshech has to do with a bite. Neshech means bite, like a snake bite. So he says that's how it feels to have to pay off, to have to pay off interest. Let's share this. It's a beautiful piece, but we'll have to share it another time. Okay. Oh, that's weird. Give me 1 second. Let's fix that. I can fix it. All right. Let's learn something from the second parsha that we read from Bechukotai. Usually we talk a little bit about the curses, but I don't think we'll have time for that today. Meanwhile, though, we do have time for something that we've been doing every single year that I've been teaching this class. It's the 4th year in a row. There are 42, count them, 42 comments of Rabbi Chaim ibn Attar on this one phrase. 42 different ways to understand what this phrase means. And over the years, we've gone through 8 of them. No, take that back. Through 7 of them. And number 8 is what we learned today. We'll learn, or actually take that back. We've learned over 5 years, or 4 years, we've learned 6 of them. We're going to learn the 7th today. Seventh way to understand this verse. The word Bechukotai is the name of the parsha. It says, Im Bechukotai teilechu. If you walk in my chukot, in my laws, if you walk in my laws, et mitzvotai tishmoru, and keep my mitzvot, v'asitem otam, and you do them, then the next verse tells us, I will give you this and that, the rain will come in its time, and the food will come in its time, and no one's going to be barren, and everybody's going to be healthy, and et cetera, et cetera. The weird thing is that the Orcha Chaim, that's Rabbi Chaim ibn Attar, a rabbi of Morocco about 250 years ago, writes, is this. If the verse already says, if you keep my mitzvot, it sounds like walking in Hashem's chukim and walking in Hashem's laws is something different. It's not just being poetic. Walk in my laws and keep my mitzvot. It can't be meaning the same thing. So mitzvot are one thing, and this has to be something else. And keeping them isn't what is. We're not told to keep them. We're told to walk in them. So we had already 6 explanations of what that means. A 7th one is this. Ode. Furthermore, another explanation. And this one goes along with what we're learning now, Pirkei Avot, where this week we learned the 4th chapter. The 5th chapter. Last week we learned, one second. Sounds like I have microphone problem. Okay, we're back. Did anybody notice a problem? All right, cool. All right, my computer is going crazy. All right. Od Yirtze, another explanation is this. Al derech omrim zal have gola lamakom Torah. That rabbis say that you should exile yourself to a place of Torah. Again, what does walking have to do with Torah? Walking means move, get out of where you live, and go to a place where you can learn Torah. That's what it says in Pirkei Avot, as it says, Al derech omrim hazal makom Torah, shetzarich lechatet raglav mimakom lamakom lilmod Torah. You have to move your feet from place to place until you get to a place where you can learn Torah. You can see this in the Gemara, the Talmud, in 2 separate places. Once in Ketubot, once in Bava Batra, tell us that all Torah students who wanted to learn Torah needed to leave their homes. Very similar to what we have nowadays. People don't, in some communities, people can stay at home and learn, I guess. But in most places, our sons and daughters have to move, have to go somewhere else to learn. And there's a story even of one particular scholar who went back and forth to yeshiva for 6 months. It took him 6 months to travel back and forth just to study Torah for one day. The Gemara in Chagiga. V'hu omro, and that's what the verse says. Im bechukotai shehi esek haTorah. That's how you learn Torah, is by Torah study. Tzrichim she'telechu mimkomchem achareha. In other words, you have to move, you have to walk from one place to another. Gam kedeti yu puguyim. And besides this, you have to be in a place where you're not inundated by other things. You're not distracted, right? Learning Torah, you have to concentrate. You have to focus on one thing. You can't be, playing games or answering emails or whatever while you're learning Torah. If you really want to know the Torah, of course you can do those things too. But this whole concept of multitasking with Torah is kind of a misnomer. You can't really. You can learn. You'll learn something. Something will rub off on you, but you'll be missing some of it. Torah is very is very all-encompassing. It requires a lot of concentration to really understand and remember things. I have people, we know people who sometimes ask questions, right? And it's good to ask questions. But I know people who ask the same question year after year after year after year. Whenever a certain parsha comes up, it's always the same questions. It's like, I gave you this answer. I'll give you another answer if you like. But why is this happening? Why does that happen? Because they're not trying to remember the answer. They just have the question. It's a good question. But if you want to know the answer, that's up to you. And I don't mind. I'll give you an answer. I'll give you multiple answers. I love questions. But that's how we learn. But you're not learning if you're not trying to remember the answer. That goes for me too, by the way. I'm not speaking to anybody specific here. There's a lot of things that I have trouble remembering. And again, if I could sit and concentrate without any distractions, God willing, I'd be able to learn it better, right? It's not correct to just learn at home. You're going to get busy with housework and this and that, and to turn on my water heater, and did I pay that bill? That I see my neighbor coming by. Let me wave to them. You get distracted by things at home. And by the way, keep in mind, he's writing 250 years ago. Nowadays, we have ways to get much more distracted. First of all, way more distracted. We could be in a shul and be distracted, right? With our phones, with our earbuds and everything else that we have. We've got all kinds of ways to be distracted. People don't even want to go for a walk anymore without listening to something. Right? They don't even want to enjoy nature. They have to hear something else. They can't even go to sleep without some noise, white noise or whatever. Right? It's a failing. We need to work on that. And that's why we need to leave our place. Sometimes a man has to leave his mother and his father, get up and go to yeshiva and learn. A woman has to get up and go and learn in seminary. It's an important thing. You need to be away from all your distractions for an extended period of time to really be able to understand Torah properly. In the dating world, in Shidduchim, one of the first questions that men are asked and that women are asked is, did you study in a yeshiva? Did you study in a seminary? That's a very common question. And the reason for that question is this right here, it's that most people want a spouse who they know has dedicated some of their time to Torah study. Are they knowledgeable? Will they have, can they contribute to a Torah discussion? It's an important piece of the puzzle. He goes on to say, right, Omer, and the rest of the verse says, "Et mitzvotai tishmoru yidbar al derech masha amru b'mesechet Shabbat." It says in Shabbat, Machri's Rabbi Yanai said, "Chaval kol man delei darta v'tara l'darta aved." So I feel so sorry for anybody who doesn't have a courtyard, like a yard, right? And still makes a gate for the courtyard. And what's this? It's a metaphor, right? What's it a metaphor for? For people who say that they fear Hashem, but they don't. They don't have any guards. They don't have a protection for what they say that they have. They don't have the fear of heaven that they should have. And they study Torah, so they should know better. The main point of Torah is to guard it, to protect it, to do it right, to not play games. Omru im Bechukotai, etc. What it says this, that keep walking my ways. Shehu Esek HaTorah. This is the Torah study. Tanai hu hadavar ve'et mitzotai tishmor ve'atzitem otam. It's based on if you, right? In other words, learning Torah by itself is nothing if you're not going to do the second half of guarding the mitzvot, of performing them, of connecting that to Hashem. In other words, you could be a university scholar of Torah studies. You could have a PhD in advanced rabbinics. And if you don't keep mitzvot, all of your Torah study is nothing. You could throw it away. It means nothing if you don't actually perform the mitzvot. Torah is not an academic activity. He goes on to say, and we're sort of running out of time. I'll just summarize very quickly. He says also that for Torah study, not only is it important to study and to keep the mitzvot, but also it's important to study them for the right reasons. You're not studying them for your self-aggrandizement. I want people to know how smart I am. Yeah, I say smart things. I quote all kinds of sources from all over the place. Oh, the microphone went off. Are we better now? Okay.
Yeah, better now.
Okay.
I can hear you now. Okay.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Thanks for telling me. Yeah. So it's not supposed to be for yourself aggrandizement. You're not supposed to learn Torah just to like say smart things in the middle of lectures or something. That's not the point. The point is you're supposed to connect with Hashem. The whole point is to connect with Hashem. Again, just like Shabbat is not just for your enjoyment, Torah study should not be for your enjoyment. You're not supposed to use, actually it says that in Pirkei Avot as well. You're not supposed to use the Torah, it says, as a shovel to make money from, right? You're not supposed to use it as like a gardening equipment, right? It's not a tool for yourself. Right? This is Hillel said this. Right? So that's an important idea as well. Again, keeping Torah keeps you on the right path. It keeps you from doing the wrong things. The Or HaChaim continues and says, gives examples of stories in the Talmud where somebody was about to sin or do the wrong thing, and then it's his own Torah study stopped him. Right? That's an important thing also to consider. Again, that closeness to Hashem. Again, you're not supposed to learn Torah to stay away from sin. You're supposed to learn Torah to get closer to Hashem, and getting closer to Hashem will keep you away from sin. Right? So that's the proper attitude, and that's again why it says, or the whole again. What's his point? What's he trying to comment on? Why does it say to walk in these ways? The point is to perform Torah, to do it, just like walking is an action. So too, Torah study is not just for some sort of a game in your head. This isn't Pac-Man. This is real life, and you're supposed to use the Torah to get closer to Hashem, just like you're supposed to use Shabbat to get closer to Hashem. And God willing, this Torah class included should help us all get closer to Hashem. The whole world should get closer to Hashem, so that we should all see very soon that world that the Ramban was talking about, that is fully Shabbat and completely Shabbat, completely spiritual, and everybody gets closer and connected to Hashem. Thank you for listening. I'm going to stop the live feed to Facebook, and if you have any questions on the class, you can either ask now or wait and ask that on the YouTube channel comment page.